अगर आप बार-बार 1, 2, 3. ओके, तो ऑडियो का So is it audible now? Okay, so just I need a quick feedback whether I'm audible properly now or not. Is it audible now? Okay. Okay. Okay, so I guess now I might be audible to you. If yes, then please give me a quick thumbs up or something so that I can start. Fine. Great. Okay. So let's quickly restart again. So this is okay. So in this video, we'll talk about the functions in Python, and here I'll tell you about the various type of functions available in Python and how you will work with these functions in Python. So before starting this topic, we need to understand that why functions are required and what is the need to use functions. So we'll talk about their basic introduction. So in general, when we write programs, many scenarios we have a logic that we have to write in a repeated way. Let's assume that you have this 4 line of logic that you have to perform n number of times in your code. So what we do in the general scenarios, when we are in the beginner phase, we repeat those lines of codes again and again in a program, right? So when we repeat the same line of code again and again in our program, this will make our program lengthy and less manageable. Okay. So to make this thing efficient, what we can do, because we know that these are the 4 lines which we have to use in a repeated way, what we can do, we can store these 4 lines in a place. We can name them something. For example, I have named it A, and then instead of repeating these 4 lines, I will simply put this letter A. Now what will happen? This letter A will simply indicate that we are talking about these 4 lines, right? So in the similar way in programming, when we have a piece of code that has to be used again and again to make that code reusable properly, we use functions. Okay. So these functions carry some reusable blocks of codes that can be used again and again. So what they do, they basically help you to reduce the repetition or the redundancy in your code. They also make your code neat and clean, and also improves the readability of the code. Okay. Now, the next and the best thing is that they help you to implement the modular programming in your programming approaches. So through this, you can use functions, you can put all the common or repetitive logic in your functions, and then you can use them. Well, if you talk about the types of functions in Python, we have three types of categories divided here. These three types of categories are built-in functions, functions defined in modules, and the user defined functions. Okay. Now, these built-in functions we have used in many scenarios. For example, we use a print function, right? Or we have a number of functions that we use for various operations while working with the user data, or while letting our user to print something on the display. So all such functions are the built-in functions. Whereas these functions which are defined in the module, these functions can be accessed by importing or including a specific module in our program. And at last, we have the user defined function category. In this category allow you to create your own function and include them in your Python program so that you can use your own logic as a function in your program. The first thing that we need to understand is the built-in functions. For example, print function, length function, type function, sum function, and then you must have used n number of functions with your list, tuple, dictionary, and other data types also. Okay, so all of these functions are already available in the Python. Okay, you don't have to include anything additional in your program. You can directly use these functions. So these are called as the built-in functions. Now, these built-in functions are already known to the Python's global environment, and that is why you can directly use them, and Python will directly understand what these functions are trying to do. Okay. The next thing that we have is functions defined in modules. Well, it is not always necessary that all the things that you have in your mind are available directly in the Python. For example, you wanted to perform a square root operation, or you wanted to perform a power operation. Okay. So for this thing, the functions are not directly available in the Python's global environment, but these functions are available in some special files which are called as the modules. Okay. So in Python, we have some special files which are called as the modules, and these modules do contain some functions also. Okay. Now, what we can do, we can directly import these modules in our program, and then we can use the module functions by using the module's name and then the function name like this. So this thing will help you to access the functions which are available in the modules. In many scenarios, these modules directly come up with the Python setup, or you have to import them in your Python environment and then you can use them. Next thing that we have is user defined functions. Now, well, it is not always important that Python or all the modules do carry all your logic, right? So in such scenarios, a user has the flexibility in Python to create their own functions so that they can write their own logic in that function, and then that code can be reused. Okay. So these user defined functions are the functions which are created by the user. And for creating a function in Python, a user has to write a def keyword before the function name, then the function name, and then we have to put these parentheses, and then we have to use this colon symbol. Now, this def keyword will help your Python environment to understand that a function definition is starting. And then to name that function definition, we have to write an identifier over here that will be the identity of your function. Now, this function may or may not have some parameters. So to hold those parameters, we have to use these parentheses over here. And then we have the colons, which indicates that the function definition body is starting from here. And then you can write your function's body. Okay. So whatever functions you are creating like this, you can directly store them at the top of your program, and then you can call them anywhere in your program as per your need. So these are the user defined functions. So now, as we have discussed about all the three basic categories, let's quickly jump into some programming, and let's try to work with these three categories of functions. At first, I will show you the use of some built-in functions of Python. So for example, you must have seen that many times when we have to print some data, we use a print function, right? This print function is also a user-defined function. So for example, you have written print and you are saying hello. Oh, sorry. So this print function has some definition that is already available to the Python. Python is known with this term print, and it knows that what it has to do whenever this term will be encountered in the Python environment. Okay. So this is a kind of built-in function. Similarly, we have a function called as type. Inside this type function, whenever you pass a value, it do return us the type of that value. For example, if I have written type 10, so it will say it is an integer, right? So this type function, this print function, these are the built-in functions which are directly available in the Python environment, right? Now let's assume you want to perform a square root operation, or you want to perform a power operation, right? Or you want to perform any other mathematical operation that is not directly available in the Python environment. Let's assume I have written power and I have written 3 comma 2. Okay. So this function was available in the Python environment, right? What about this? What if I write sqrt and I say 9 comma 2? Oh, sorry, only 9. So it says that this sqrt term is not defined, right? But what if I simply write import math and then I say math dot sqrt and 9? So this time we are getting the answer as 3. Well, the reason is but obvious. This math is a module that is not available in the Python's environment, but we have imported it right now. And once you have imported this math module, so all the functions which were written inside this math module are imported in your Python's environment, or in this window, or in this page which is currently being executed by the Python. And when you are using this math.sqrt, you are simply instructing the Python to use the sqrt function which was available inside this math module. So what will happen here? Python will simply call the sqrt function from the math module, and then it will ask that sqrt function to perform the operation over the data which you have passed over here. Got it? So this is how these built-in functions do work. Similarly, we have a random module here. So if we write simply if I directly call a function called as random, so you can see it do give you an error, right? But if I write import random, now this import command over here, it helps you to import that entire module in your programming space so that you can use the functions which will which were available in your module. Okay. So if I have written import random and then I'm writing random, that is the module's name dot the function name. For example, the function that I want to use is randint. Okay. So you can see that now it is able to recognize the function, and it is also able to recognize the structure of the function. So from the error now only you can clearly understand that now it is able to recognize the function, and it is also able to recognize that this function is having two positional arguments, right? Now what are these arguments? We will talk about this later on. So if I simply put it again like this, and if I pass the arguments like 1, oh sorry, and comma 2, let's see. So now you are able to get a result here, right? Similarly, if I again use it and if I say 1 comma 10, so now you will get a random number from this range. Okay. So this is how this function works. This is how the modular functions do work, or these module based functions do work, right? Now let's talk about one scenario. You have been asked to find the area of a square, right? And you have been asked to perform this operation on number of values. So what you will do, you will take an input parameter from the user for length, you will take another input parameter for the from the user for the width, and then you will multiply these things if you are working for a square value. sorry, like for a rectangle shape, let's say, okay, and then you will return the result to the user, right? Now let's assume you have 100 of such values. So what you will do, will you write the same logic 100 times? Or what if we have a complex logic over here? Okay, what if I ask you to find the factorial of a number, and I'm saying that there are 10 numbers and you have to find their factorials? Okay, so in such scenarios, if you will repeat that code logic again and again, it will make your program lengthy. Let me show you how. So I'm going to open a new window here first. Okay, so what I'm doing, let's say I have taken the number as n and sorry, as l, and I have written int, and then I'm saying input, then I'm saying enter length, fine, and then I have taken another variable b for the breadth. I'm saying input, and then I have said enter the breadth value, and now I am saying that l, sorry, area equals to l into b. Okay, and then I'm printing this thing. I'm saying that print area is, let's say, this variable area. Okay, got it. Now I want to perform this operation for 10 inputs, right? Let's assume that I wanted to perform this operation on 10 inputs. So I have two scenarios now. Option 1 says that I will save this program somewhere. Let's say I have saved it here, like p1. Okay, option 1 says that I will run it once, then I will run it again, and I already know that I have to use this thing 10 times. Okay, so what I am doing, I am executing the same program 10 times, right? Or the second approach was, if I write the same logic 10 times like this, let's assume. Okay, so this is one of the approaches, right? Or the best approach is, because I know that I have to use this function n number of times, what I can do, I can directly write this thing inside a function named as area, right? I can assign all these logical statements to this function like this. So what I have done, I have written this def keyword, which is telling my Python environment that I am about to define a function. Then I have told Python that this function will be named as area. Okay, and then after this colon symbol, from the next line I have given the function's definition. Function definition means all the logical statements that will be a part of your function, all the expressions that will be a part of your function, okay, will be written over here. And now I can easily call this thing area. Okay, now the best part is, let us assume that we had a very big program, a very complex coding structure, where I was supposed to perform an operation n number of times. So now what I can do, I can simply create a function, store it at the top of my program, and call that function name at that place where I was supposed to put that logic. Okay, so what benefits will happen here? The first thing is that my code is properly organized. Second most important thing, that complex logic that was supposed to be repeated n number of times is now written at one place. And if I have to perform some changes, I will just perform those changes at one place in the functional definition, and wherever it was used, I don't have to do anything over there, right? So this is how these functions, these user-defined functions, they help us to make our programs more effective. Okay. Now, after these user-defined functions, the next thing that we have to understand is what are the arguments and what are the parameters. Okay, so basically we have seen these arguments and parameters in the case of these built-in functions here, or these module functions over here, right? Similarly, when we are talking about our user defined functions, these user defined functions can also have arguments or parameters. So to understand argument and parameters, we have a very simple example over here: def add a comma b and then return a plus b. And then you can see this line over here, right? Now this line over here is the function calling part. Now this def keyword and these two lines were the function's definition, and this line over here is carrying the function calling part. It means it is that piece of code which is basically calling your function. So in this part, the parameters are the variables which are available inside your function's definition, which means that this a and b are the parameters here. Okay, so what are the parameters? Parameters are the variables which will be used in your function's definition, whereas when you are calling your function and you are passing the values, so the values that you have passed in the function, that is this 5 and this 3, these are the arguments. Okay, so these arguments are the values that you will pass to a function, whereas the variables which you have used in the function definition are called as the parameters. So in general scenarios, whenever we talk about the parameters or the arguments, so parameters are the variables which will be given to the function definition, and arguments are the values which are actually passed to those parameters. Okay, now these parameters and arguments are again divided into certain categories. So one category that we have is called as default parameters. In default parameters, the default value for that parameter is already given, which simply means that if in case the user will not pass any value to the function will automatically get the value from the function's definition, which was written as the default value. Okay, so for example, I had this function greet having this one parameter name, and when I was calling it for the very first time, I have not given any name over here, right? So what will happen this time? This time the function will take the default value user and it will put this value in the function's body. Okay. Whereas in the second category, I have given a value. So if I will pass a value, then this default value will be ignored and it will be replaced by this value Rajat. And this time the output will be hello Rajat. Okay. Next thing we have is positional parameters. Now, positional parameters is a concept that we need to understand. It simply says that the arguments must be passed in a proper order, which means that if in the function definition first you have written the variable name and then you have written the variable age, so when you are calling this function, then you have to pass the values in the same order as they were written in the function's definition, which simply means that the first value will be assigned to this variable name and the second value will be assigned to the variable age. Okay, so if let's say I do a simple mistake here and if I call this function person age and if I write 12 and let's say Ramu, so what will happen this time? This 12 will be stored in the name and this Ramu will be stored in the age because of their position, and this little logical mistake will give us an incorrect output, which will result in as 12 is Ramu years old, right? So that is why it is very important to keep the position of arguments while we are working with the functions. Next thing that we have is functions returning values. Now, in many scenarios, the functions that we use, these functions do return some values, or in certain scenarios, we do not have the return values in functions. So in case if you want your function to return some values to the calling point, then we can use the return statement in our function. This return statement will basically help your function to give the value back to the place from where it was called. For example, if I have this function like this def square n and I have written return n into n, so what will happen this time? When you will call this function square, it will go up here, it will perform all the logical operations, it will come to the return statement. Now this return statement will carry some answers or some results for this function, and these results values will be sent back to the place where the function was called. Okay, so which simply means that whatever result was calculated will be returned back and will be stored in this variable which was storing the function call. Okay, so this is how we can return the values and we can store them. Now let's talk about the flow of execution, how a function basically works. So in case of function calling, the statement which was written first will be executed first, and the statement which was written afterwards will be called afterwards. Okay, so these functions are called or executed step by step. Okay, basically our program will go from top to bottom, and steps will be like performed step by step. For example, if you are calling step 1 first, so you will get the output as step 1. If the step 2 was a second function that was called, so your output will be step 2 in the second line. But if you have called them like this, step 2 and then step 1, so in this scenario your first line of output will be step 2 and the second line will be step 1. So it simply means that in the order you have called the functions, in that same order you will get the output. Okay, so that was all about the flow of execution. Now we have a very important concept called as the scope of variables. Whenever we talk about the functions, a very important concept of scope of variables come here that plays a very important role in the function scenarios. So we have two type of variable scopes available in Python. First is called as the local scope, other one is called as the global scope. In a local scope, the variables which are available inside the function can only be accessed from the inside of the function. They cannot be accessed outside the function. What I mean to say, if I have a program like this, a is equals to 10, and I had a function like this, def abc, okay, where I have written b equals to 5, and then I'm saying that print b, then I have called this abc, okay, and if I have written print a here and then print b here, so there will be one issue with this program. That one issue will be this variable b which I am trying to print over here, our program will not be able to find this variable b. The reason is this variable b was not available outside this function, right? This variable b is only available inside the function. So that is why it can only be accessed inside this function. So we can call such variables as the local variables. We can call such variables as the local variables because these variables were defined in a local scope that was the function's body, and they cannot be used outside the function body. Okay. Whereas similarly, if I talk about this variable a was declared at the top of the program and outside the function before the function's definition. So it can be assumed as a global variable that can be used either inside the function or outside the function, but only after its declaration. Okay, which means that this a can be used after its declaration either inside the function or outside the function. So it can be assumed as a global variable that can be used in the entire program space. So with this we have talked about some of the basic concepts of function. We have understood like why functions are important, then we have discussed about the built-in functions, module based functions, and user defined functions. Then I have gave you a quick introduction of parameters, arguments, and scope of the variables. So this was all for the today's class. In the next class we'll talk about these these concepts in a detailed manner. So thank you guys, thank you for watching this video. Bye bye.